There was a time when the world was connected. Ships carried tin and copper across sapphire seas. Palaces rose from stone and ambition. Kings wrote letters to kings in languages that crossed continents. The Mediterranean wasn't a barrier. It was a highway. And then, in the span of a single lifetime, it all disappeared. Not slowly, not gradually. Within 50 years, almost every major city from Greece to Mesopotamia burned to the ground. Empires that had stood for centuries vanished like smoke. This wasn't just the fall of civilizations. This was the death of civilization itself. The world forgot how to read. It forgot how to write. It forgot how to build. For 300 years, humanity stumbled through darkness, trying to remember what it once knew. They call it the Bronze Age collapse. But that name doesn't capture what really happened. This was the day the ancient world ended, and no one knows why. The world before the darkness. Imagine the Mediterranean in 1200 BCE. It's more advanced than you think. The Hittite Empire controls Anatolia, fielding armies of chariots that shake the earth. Egypt, under Ramesses the Great, builds monuments that still defy explanation. The Mycenaeans rule Greece, their palaces filled with gold and linear B tablets, recording everything from taxes to troop movements. But the real story isn't empires. It's connection. Trade routes link the entire known world in a web of interdependence. Tin from Afghanistan travels 3,000 miles to mix with copper from Cyprus, creating the bronze that gives the age its name. Amber from the Baltic reaches Egypt. Egyptian gold reaches Mesopotamia. Mesopotamian lapis lazuli reaches Crete. A merchant in Ugarit can write a letter in Akkadian, send it to a king in Cyprus, and expect a reply within weeks. Ships cross open water using sophisticated navigation. Diplomats negotiate treaties between kingdoms that speak different languages but share a common world. This isn't primitive. This is globalization, Bronze Age style. Kings don't just trade goods, they trade daughters, forming marriage alliances that bind dynasties together. They trade ideas, they trade technologies. The palace at Knossos has running water. The Hittites have iron weapons, a secret they guard fiercely. The world is connected, complex and growing, and then it stops. The unraveling. Around 1200 BCE, the letters between kings take on a desperate tone. A message from the king of Ugarit to the king of Cyprus. The enemy ships are already here. They have set fire to my cities and have done harm to the land. All my troops are in Hittite land, and all my ships are in Lycia. The country is abandoned. May my father know it. That's the last letter ever sent from Ugarit. Within a generation, the great cities fall. Mycenae burns, Pylos burns. Hattusa, capital of the mighty Hittites, burns. Ugarit burned so completely that the heat melts stone. Excavations reveal bodies in the streets, treasures abandoned in palaces, weapons dropped mid-battle. People fled in such panic they left gold behind, one city after another, one kingdom after another. The entire eastern Mediterranean descends into chaos. But here's what haunts historians. We don't know who did this. We don't even know if it was a who at all. The Sea Peoples mystery Egyptian records mention them. The Sea Peoples. Ramesses III carved scenes on temple walls showing his armies fighting waves of invaders. Strange warriors with horned helmets and feathered headdresses. But the Egyptians don't say where they came from. They don't say what they wanted. Were they invaders, refugees, both? Some historians think they were raiders from the north. Others think they were displaced populations, fleeing something worse. Climate data shows devastating droughts across the Mediterranean. 3 consecutive crop failures could starve an empire, but the Sea Peoples might be a symptom, not a cause. A label Egyptians gave to the chaos when the world started falling apart. Because here's the thing, the collapse wasn't just military, it was systemic, the cascade. The Bronze Age world was like a house of cards, beautiful, intricate and fragile. Take away one card and others start to shake. Take away enough and everything falls. Imagine you're a kingdom that depends on tin from Afghanistan. Your entire military runs on bronze weapons. Bronze is tin plus copper. But if the trade routes collapse, if bandits control the roads, if ships stop sailing, you can't make bronze anymore. Your army weakens. Your neighbors see an opportunity. They invade. Your kingdom falls. Now the trade route through your territory disappears. Other kingdoms can't get their resources. They weaken, they fall. It's dominoes, but in every direction at once. The palace economies collapsed next. These weren't market economies. Everything flowed through centralized palaces. The palace collected grain from farmers, distributed it to workers, paid craftsmen, organized trade. When the palaces burned, the entire economic system vanished. No one knew how much grain to plant. No one organized the harvest. No one distributed food in winter. Famine followed fire, and with famine came migration. Entire populations abandoned their cities. They became the refugees, the raiders, the desperate people the Egyptians called sea peoples. The collapse fed itself. The forgetting. But the most devastating loss wasn't physical. It was knowledge. In the Bronze Age, literacy was rare. Only palace scribes could read and write. They recorded everything on clay tablets, tax records, treaties, religious texts, merchant accounts, the accumulated knowledge of civilizations. When the palaces burned, the scribes died or fled. The tablets were buried under ash, and humanity forgot how to read. For 300 years, the Dark Age, there are almost no written records, none from Greece, none from Anatolia, none from the Levant. Think about what that means. A grandfather could remember a world of palaces and ships, of letters and laws. His son would know only ruins. His grandson would think the ruins were built by gods. Oral tradition kept some memories alive, transformed into myths. The Trojan War, likely a real Bronze Age conflict, became the Iliad, sung for generations before it was written down. But the technical knowledge, how to navigate by stars, how to make bronze, how to build with stone, how to organize an economy, gone. People literally forgot how to live the way their grandparents had lived. Villages replaced cities, subsistence replaced trade, isolation replaced connection. The Mediterranean became dangerous again. The sea that once united the world now separated survivors, huddling on its shores. The philosophical question. So what does the Bronze Age collapse teach us? First, it teaches us about fragility. The ancient world looked permanent. Kings thought their dynasties would last forever. Scribes recorded their deeds for eternity. Builders carved stone as if time itself could be conquered. But complexity creates vulnerability. The more connected the system, the more ways it can break. The more specialized the society, the more it depends on everything working. When Bronze Age kingdoms depended on tin from a single source, they bet their survival on stability. When palace economies concentrated all knowledge in one place, they created a single point of failure. Second, it teaches us that collapse isn't always violent. Yes, cities burned. Yes, people died. But the real catastrophe was systemic. The trade routes failed. The economic model broke. The knowledge systems disappeared. You can survive a war. You can't survive forgetting how to farm. Third, it teaches us about recovery, because humanity did recover, slowly, painfully, over centuries. The Greeks forgot Linear B, but they learned the Phoenician alphabet and created something even better. The Phoenicians, survivors of the collapse, became the greatest sailors the ancient world had known. They didn't just remember how to sail. They invented new ways. Iron replaced bronze. It was harder to work with, but iron ore was everywhere. Kingdoms no longer depended on distant trade. New political systems emerged, smaller, more resilient, city-states instead of empires. The classical world that rose from the ashes, Athens, Rome, Jerusalem, was built by people who learned from the collapse. The warning we ignore. We live in a Bronze Age world. Our supply chains span continents. A chip shortage in Taiwan stops car production in Detroit. A ship stuck in the Suez Canal disrupts the global economy. Our food comes from 1,000 miles away. Our electricity depends on grids that cover half a continent. We've built a system more complex, more connected, more efficient than anything in history, and we've bet everything on it, continuing. The Bronze Age collapse reminds us that complexity has a cost. That interconnection creates fragility. That knowledge, once lost, is almost impossible to recover. It reminds us that civilizations don't fall to barbarians. They fall to cascading failures, to systems that can't adapt, to the moment when everything that holds a world together quietly breaks at once. The choice. The people of 1200 BCE didn't see it coming. They thought their world was permanent. They optimized for efficiency, not resilience. By the time they realized something was wrong, it was too late to adapt. We have one advantage they didn't. We know it's possible. We know that great civilizations fall. We know that complex systems fail. We know that the world can forget how to live. The question is whether we'll use that knowledge. Will we build resilience into our systems or just efficiency? Will we preserve knowledge in multiple places or concentrate it in fragile centers? Will we prepare for disruption or assume it will never come? The Bronze Age world was magnificent, and it ended in a single generation, not because people were foolish, not because they were weak, but because they built a world so complex, so interconnected, so optimized, that when it started to break, nothing could stop it. 3,000 years later, we're building the same world again. Only bigger, only faster, only more fragile. The Bronze Age collapse happened once. It erased civilizations from the earth and plunged humanity into darkness for 3 centuries. The only question is whether we're wise enough to remember the lesson or doomed to learn it again.